Let's go.
Wow, yeah, I'm excited. I'm hanging out with Scott Winter. Scott is a good friend of mine. We have definitely developed a relationship over the years. He is living in my old stomping grounds. He lives in Redondo Beach, Hollywood Riviera, where I grew up. So whenever we're on our way down to the South Bay, thankfully we get to stop by and see him and his family. Our girls are good friends. Our wives are good friends. We're good friends. Scott, thanks for being with us. How's your day? What's happening? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Lance. Uh, yeah, we got some June gloom here in the South
Okay.
Bay. A nice overhang of cloud.
Nice.
Summer's going well. Yeah, super glad to be here and honored that you asked me on, and I love this subject. So
Yeah, so we're dancing around this really big idea of creativity and justice. And Scott, really grateful to have him. Such an honor to have him. Scott is an actor, involved in the entertainment industry in the Hollywood land, the movie industry. He's got a long history there and is creative and dreaming and doing projects. And so just what a pleasure to sit down with Scott. Maybe just if people don't know you well, talk about kind of your background, what you're up to, why we invited you into the conversation of creativity and justice.
yeah. So I've been an actor in Hollywood for I guess I was doing commercials in New York in theater in the early 90s. And then I did my first, what they would call legit job. I don't know why it's called legit, but it was my first TV job. That would have been in like 1996. So I've been working for about 26 years in film and television. I've probably done like, close to 200 episodes of television. A lot of it, just to drop a buzzword, like a lot of it kind of groundbreaking, was on HBO's first 1 hour drama. Oz was a real kind of hit show. We were out at the same time as Sopranos, and been in, an Oscar winning movie, Golden Globe nominated movie. Sometimes these things carry some significance in the industry and sometimes they don't. But I love acting. It's been great. I've had big dreams and outrageous dreams, megalomaniac type dreams for a very long time. And it's a very difficult industry, but I've been afforded some favor, which has given, helped me maintain at least a toehold. So that's been good. And then in the last several years, Lance, as you know, I'm kind of a budding producer and screenwriter, and more specifically, like the last year, I'm doing quite a bit of screenwriting. So,
wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
So a big footprint in that space.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to share your motivation, your drive, what you've seen. I know that motivation and drive evolves through time, and we're not talking about like you've been there for 6 months. You've been in this space for over 20 years, over 25 years.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Long time, a long time.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the drive and the motivation and that essence of being in the entertainment industry, being in the movie industry, being an actor, like here's why for me.
Yeah. I heard once that there was this Japanese art form in theater called the theater of no, as in the word like no, and essentially you move toward those things which you're disinclined to move toward. So it's really about kind of almost a spirit of overcoming. And
wow.
I feel like the Lord gifted me with just a natural affinity for acting, for just performance. I think a lot of us have that, but I had quite a bit of performance fear growing up.
Wow.
And so I didn't pursue acting. I had a couple of experiences that were actually kind of humiliating. Uh, One was in my senior high school, senior year in high school. I was doing a report on werewolves, and I just bombed, and it was just kind of humiliating. It's like funny when I think about it, but I had some like marking experiences that really amplified that performance fear, and so I didn't go after acting, and I went to a really good university. I went to Northwestern in Chicago, and they've got a tremendous theater program, and I didn't do it there. And that was hard for me. So when I moved to New York City after college, and the East Coast rather, it was just really gnawing at me. And so I finally went after theater. I finally went out. I took an acting class because I was petrified, and it was just, a lot of us do that. Like, we'll just go after something because we just feel like we're not going to have peace until we actually resolve, this fear, which is most of the time illusory. So I went after acting, and it was just like a great breakthrough, undramatic, but super dramatic for me on the inside moment. And I started studying acting. That was in New York City in a 2-hour, like 3 hours twice a week acting program. And that was great because I started to really deal head on with that fear. And so acting, I didn't have any spirituality at that point. I didn't have a base. Um, and so, but acting provided kind of a secular salvation for me.
Mm.
Because I think creativity has a certain resonant power with God where he really affords a tremendous amount of grace to those who just engage creativity.
Wow.
I've seen this over and over. And I think it's why I probably relate with artists so well.
Wow.
I love worshiping with artists. There's a church or two in LA, where when I'm there and they're worshiping, and like one of them meets in an exotic car dealership, and it's all artists and industry people. It's just off the Richter scale.
Wow.
There's just something about the right brain folks, and we all have that. We all can tap into that. But then there's some who are just wholly dedicated to it. So anyway, acting provided this kind of secular salvation experience for me, where I was able to ride the power of creativity for a few years and still not deal with my heart at a really deep level. And then I had this head-on collision with Jesus, which was amazing and life-changing and cathartic, and tectonic plates shifting, and it was awesome. And then I had to pause for a moment because I was actually doing a fair amount of theater and gaining some expertise in acting. Like I started doing commercials. I started doing theater. I went to the Edinburgh Festival in Scotland with my theater company in New York City, and we did really well. And I was like the lead in this show, and so I was really loving this. And then I met Jesus, and I just realized, wow, okay. So I needed a different narrative, because until then, acting was just about freedom. It was about making a name for myself, getting recognition, making money, like, all the reasons why we choose the livelihoods that we do. But then when I collided with the Lord, I realized that, okay, well, so what's the finish line for, like, what's the commandment? And it's to make disciples of nations. And I was looking at Hollywood kind of objectively at that point, and it carries this absurd influence in the world, as we know, as an industry. And Jesus being the desire of the nations, I was like, well, all right, let's transform Hollywood. And so that just started a journey for me where I just started trying to think in terms of kingdom and how kingdom and Hollywood could merge. Sorry, that was a really long answer, man. But
no, that's wow.
Yeah, but that's like the tip of an iceberg. Like,
Yeah.
That's just the tip. So
Yeah. So let's go a little bit more into that, like the grace that God has for people that engage in creativity.
Yeah.
There is something really powerful there.
So powerful, bro.
Because I think
Yeah.
there's so many people, as you said, that are creative and don't engage. There's so much
Yeah.
fear there. I don't know what it is, the vulnerability, but you're in this as a lifestyle. Talk about that grace, talk about what would keep people from engaging creativity. And then when they do cross over and start engaging, maybe how God's meeting them. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. No, I felt God's faithfulness so powerfully. I had graduated from Northwestern
Okay.
and I was living just like a foolish, single, secular guy,
Yeah.
living at home. It's like a bad after school kind of movie. But anyway, I don't know how to describe it, but I was so restless because I had so much unused, untapped creativity in me. And I didn't know that. Nobody told me that, you know. I had dated an actress, but that was it. But I was quietly envious of her life, so I just did this thing. I took electric tape and I cut up all these ribbons of electric tape and I made these stick figures on my wall, like just going across my wall, like in motion, like different positions of these stick figures. I was so pleased with it. And I just stared at it. I just stared at it. And I felt, and I didn't know the Lord, but I literally felt like there was some divine, like he had just blessed that silly, like meaningless, on the surface activity.
Wow.
It gave me, it's weird, because it's so like, okay, it gave me a ton of encouragement. And it was simply like, well, it's like all things in the kingdom. It's about engagement. And so I just engaged this and it gave me like all this courage. And I feel like it opened a door for me in a much larger way to paint a little bit, and then it ultimately led to taking an acting class.
Wow.
So yeah, so I do feel that. I feel like, we live in a world that it defines us by what we do, and there's this incredible appearance performance dynamic here in Babylon, and it's aggressive, and I feel like it kind of strangles the creative impulse.
Wow.
Because we there's this instant thing where we try and monetize. We wonder, is it really worth it? Is it really worth doing? And I just want to encourage people that I feel like when we do engage this creative impulse, that it sets things in motion, that heaven backs us. Like whenever we engage that right brain hemisphere. And I think it's really important. You look at I think the first recorded person in the Bible who's visited by the Holy Spirit, and it's Bezalel. It's this artisan who fashioned the Ark of the Covenant of Mercy, and that's not like a small thing. That an artisan would be exalted, and spoken of as being, having this gift of the Holy Spirit resting upon him. And we see in Chronicles, we see like this army of musicians like going in against Israel's enemy. And there's something about creativity that it's kind of like this gift that keeps on giving. It's like it's a real child's exploration, and we know how much Jesus uses. The one thing you need to walk in the kingdom is the faith of a child. There's childlikeness all over the scriptures, and I think creativity is like so available to kids because they haven't been strangled by the appearance performance components of adult life, or so Yeah. I've got like new,
Of, yeah,
I've got,
even beyond adult life, of society, because
of society. Yeah. Yeah.
that thing gets strangled. Like, there was a study done that an artist would go into a classroom of first graders. How many of our artists in here? Everybody raised their hands, and he literally, age by age, fewer hands would go up. Second graders, fewer hands. Third graders, fewer hands, until middle school. There'd be maybe one or two people that had the courage to say I was an artist. And yet
Yeah.
first graders in their childishness and their youngness,
Yeah.
every hand would go up. What do you think it is that constricts people from embracing that creativity that's inherent, it's natural?
Yeah. I think it's fear. I think it's a spirit of control.
Okay.
Um, some of these are such buzzwords, Lance, but they're actually really useful. I feel like this kind of Babylonian um, foundational culture that we have, which is, we've got lawlessness, like that harlot picture from Revelation 17. We've got, on one hand, we've got this hyper tolerance and lawlessness on one hand, and then on the other hand, it's almost like the extreme is like this. I don't know. I was going to say Sharia law. I'm going off here. I do think that there's almost like a violent guardianship that to just guard that childlike impulse. It's so important, you know.
Yeah.
And I can say this. It almost brings tears to my eyes, like, because recently I was at a wedding. It was a gal from Bethel. It was a close friend of ours, and I saw this thing at the wedding. It was in Central Cal and Tulare, and at the wedding, beautiful outdoor wedding. It looked like a scene from Inherit the Wind, on this farm, and there was this sign that was made out of lights. And I just was like, I went to this place of being a little kid, and I stared at it at this wedding for so long. And I'm so excited, bro, because I'm gonna make that sign. I'm gonna make a different version of it, but it's out of like lights. Because I started seeing it like a little kid, and it elicited that creative artist feeling that I haven't had in 2 years.
Wow.
Well, no, that's not true, because I've been screenwriting a fair amount. And I do get it as a screenwriter.
Yeah.
It's almost like this innocent obsession where you just can't help yourself. You just keep building and doing and just adding. And I had it 2 years ago when I was diving for abalone shells.
Oh, wow.
And every time I was free diving, and I would go to this place off of Orange County, and the seagrass was like crazy beautiful. And I went with a friend. But when I would see an abalone shell, it would be like 20 feet down on the floor of the ocean. I turned into like a 6-year-old, and I would, just dive down 20 feet. And it was a little bit of a near-death experience, but it wasn't. But I have a little bit of a fear of the ocean. But it was so worth it to me that I would take that risk and go all the way down, and then grabbing it. It was like I literally found a jewel.
Yeah.
And so I went back to this place like 3-4 times, and so those two are prominent creative experiences that I've had in the last couple of years, aside from the screenwriting, where I just come to this place of like wonder. And I feel like it's so important for us.
But to enter into that wonder, there's a reality of people maybe confronting fears, or, well, how's this supposed to go? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, when you're in that childlike space, maybe it's just like there's freedom.
There's freedom. There's so much
Don't worry so much about it. Or what would you say there?
What's that?
Or what would you say there? It's like, hey, don't worry so much about it. Just engage, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, there is freedom, and it's protective. It's protective. It's almost like this mama bear protection over your brain, right? Which we're so vulnerable to our culture, and to strong held thoughts, and to just lattices of disinformation. We're so vulnerable to this stuff. And I feel like creativity is this real, like, it's like this built-in guardrail, that God is like installed in us. And I think it's important for us to be faithful to it,
Yeah.
to explore it, to engage it, because I think there's so much magic on the other side of it.
And what you're saying, the covering and the protection is like it keeps us from
It-
jadedness. From what do you mean?
yeah, exactly. It keeps us from jadedness. It keeps us from groupthink. It destroys all those filters that we gain as we age and become adults, and we enter into self-consciousness and anxiety and comforts and like all of these things. Like, there's something about the creative impulse that is so godly and it's so
Wow.
easy. But in the culture that we live, unless you're making a living doing it, it's not exalted. It's not revered as it might be in other circles or other places,
Yeah.
other nations.
Well, and that's, I mean, this is a big topic. We're talking about how creativity or art might beautify things in the earth, might make broken things whole, or things that are in disrepair shining in a certain kind of glow of beauty. And you're saying, yeah, creativity itself beautifies the earth because it keeps people right. That's a really big idea. I've never heard that. That is very inspiring.
Yeah.
I was just at a friend's house that is the brother of a very famous musician, and they're very much artists. Their whole livelihood is art. And just being in their home, I was like, wow, like just this like wonder of creativity, the art on the walls. And I was just going back because I have definitely grown old and I'm very much less creative.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
don't engage in that as much. And I was like, wow, this feels refreshing. It was like I was going back to my 20s when I used to write a lot and just mess around, never for any sort of consequence. Like, okay, I'm going to write so that I would just write
Yeah.
or paints for what. And this is literally just a few days ago. I'm like, wow, I gotta engage this more. And now talking to you, I'm like, oh man, I'm inspired.
Yeah, that's good. I was just at a buddy's birthday party. It was a big bash. It was up in Idaho, not too far from Jackson Hole, and he flew like a band in, an incredible like country band from Kentucky. And I mean, like 180 to 200 people were at this birthday. They had just come in from everywhere, and this guy got my attention who was walking around. And he looked like an outcast. He so did not belong, kind of, at this party, but he did, because there were a lot of creatives there. But he just had like long hair, ponytailed, like multiple rings and piercings, and he got my attention because I just saw he had like big eye, like I saw this wonder in his eyes. And I'm just gonna be real here. We were like at the bar in the barn, in this incredible barn that
Wow.
they built on their property. And we're standing there, and I really wanted to connect with him. And it was the creative thing. Like, I kind of chased him down. And it was literally because I knew that he had a creative gift in him.
Wow.
And so I said to him, you want to do a shot? Because we're standing at the bar. And then he starts laughing. I was like, you want to do a shot of mezcal? And I'm not like a big drinker, but he started laughing because the bottle of Casamigos, he's like, I designed that bottle. And that's like George Clooney and Randy Gerber's, $1 billion like tequila. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I designed that bottle. And he started laughing. He's like, I never tell anybody that. And anyway, I'm going to go out to we had this incredible conversation. He's like a storyboarder. I was like, dude, he wants to get into animation. And I started talking about this whole animation thing that I have wanted to do with Revelation, the book, John's book. And so I'm going to go out to his studio in LA. He's got a big studio. But the jewel of that meeting was that we literally both, I had this impression of him because he kind of looks like this warrior guy who might not be that kind or whatever, but I saw something else on him and it was true. And we just became little kids and like just blah, 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 just like babbling. So like, I don't know if there was any perceived wall of enmity. It was creativity that just, you know, blew it up. Like, because we recognized that in each other, you know. That was like just the recent thing. And then recently, Lance, just to ice that cake, so to speak, I'm writing an indie film right now. I was just in New Orleans talking with the guy who commissioned me to do it. And I'm just having so much fun. Like I'm like literally like, you know, I'm doing it like sitting in my bed at midnight. I'm still going. I'm like sitting with one of my daughters, you know, by a television, something's on. I'm just kind of, I probably look obsessive, but I'm just having so much fun because I'm in such a flow with it, you know? So
can you talk about that? Talk about how writing can become fun. So I think there's a lot of people out there that like writing is just perceived as such hard work. How are you getting into that flow state?
You know what's amazing, bro, is like I'm in the weirdest season. And again, I'm being real.
I love it.
I am driving Uber a fair amount.
Okay. Nice. So you're doing that kind of like a side hustle.
I'm doing it as a side hustle while
Sweet.
I'm writing a video game for an NFT with my co-writer, who I've written like a pretty big feature film script for.
Okay.
And we've written this whole thing, this video game for an NFT, and we've also gotten the rights of first refusal for the movie franchise, because it's like it's a pretty awesome idea. It's like Jumanji meets Dune, if you will. I'm like auditioning, you know, for all, like I had 4 auditions in the last, 48 hours. And then I'm writing, this indie film, and then I'm Ubering, right? Like I'm doing, and it's just weird. It doesn't add up on paper so much. It looks, like in Babylon, like, wait, what, but and I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of it. It's just like what I'm doing, because I kind of have to, because it's been tight for us.
Yeah.
And the creativity is what is really, as well as obviously the Lord and just walking with him in his faithfulness, but it's keeping me so buoyant.
Yeah.
Because it would be really easy for me to fall into, I think, depression, and just feeling like, wow, bro, you're living in friggin' LA, and, and it's just hard. That's all. It's just, it would be a lot harder, but because I've got this all these creative projects, like, I don't care, it's fine. I've even been recognized driving somebody like once or twice, just from like some movie or some TV show, and like I don't care, and I know that it's just the creative element. So to answer your question, I was in the car last night and I just put on public radio. I think I was picking somebody up at LAX or something, and they're talking about this guy's an amazing songwriter, singer. He wrote the song Hallelujah, that Jeff Buckley ended up redoing. Do you know who I'm talking about? It's going to drive me crazy.
I
Okay.
don't, but that's okay.
Leonard Cohen.
Okay.
Leonard Cohen. Okay. Do you know the song Hallelujah?
I think so.
Okay. If you play it, bro, and I encourage you, like, play Hallelujah by Jeff Buckley when we're done, and it'll drop you. Like, it'll totally drop you. Leonard Cohen wrote that song, and he originally wrote it about King David. Leonard Cohen is a market. He's a dude. He was a songwriter and brilliant. It took him 7 years, Lance, to write that song.
Wow.
And that really, that gave me so much hope, so much encouragement. When it comes to writing, you know, we are so wired for story as creatures of this creator. He has wired us for story. It's just this infinite super highway that he has given us a need and a heart for, that requires, there's some rules, but then I believe he's given it to us because it's actually about unbridled freedom. But there are rules, like you need a beginning, you need a middle, and you need an end. You know, you need stories to be character driven. When they're not character driven, they're plot driven. And it's an age old argument in the industry. You know, is your story plot driven or character driven? Okay, well, your plot driven stories are going to probably be more in the realm of like Marvel. And we love Marvel, right? And the best Marvel movies tend to be more character driven. I don't know. Speaking of Marvel movies, a quick rabbit trail. I think that the reason that we love Marvel so much is because creation is groaning for the manifestation of the sons of God. Because really, the sons of God are the Marvel guys. I mean, that's who we are. Like, that's
Wow.
made us to be. And I think that's why there's just been this crazy drive, because God speaks through this stuff, just like God speaks through Top Gun. Like, Top Gun is a frigging amazing movie. Even if you didn't like the original, what came to mind for me with Top Gun, and I know I'm rabbit trailing, but I'll come back. Like,
No, it's great. This is great.
Yeah. Like Genesis 18, when God says to Abraham, your seed shall possess the gates of your enemies. That's Top Gun. It's Tom Cruise as this captain who's never gone anywhere, who actually has this redemptive moment in his life that just pierces through all of the darkness that's accumulated for him. It's he and Miles Teller coming back in the enemy's plane. Like, that was gangster. Like, they came back in their enemy's plane. Like, I just believe that movie had these archetypes in it, which is why there was a 6-minute standing O at Cannes Film Festival, because it's got this universal appeal for everybody. Like, even if you're not a Tom Cruise fan or not a military movie guy, I just think that everybody was able to climb into the archetypal themes in that movie. And I think that we can all do that as writers when we really engage the characters. You know, whether you're writing a novel or you're writing a screenplay or you're writing a poem, you know, it's really about engaging your protagonists and your antagonists, because a story, and all the supporting characters, because a story, we are so wired for one another that unless a story is character driven, it's not going to be that interesting. It's going to be all about plot. So your characters are going to be kind of hollow. And we've seen that sometimes. Like, we've seen Christian screenwriters come to Hollywood, and hey, whether Christ is preached in pretense or in truth, as long as Christ is preached, I applaud all of them. Sometimes, and not just Christian screenwriters, secular screenwriters, movies will have an agenda. And so they will be more plot driven than character driven. And when that happens, we're not interested. We're not interested in the characters. So we can't climb upon the back of any particular protagonist or even antagonist. And so we lose interest.
Wow.
So I believe that the best writers are probably screenwriters. And that sounds so weird because, well, how could that be true? Because when you go and see a movie, you're not really thinking about the writing. You're watching something. The final product is not screenwriting. It's actually viewing. It's cinema, right? And it's what we do in life. So there's this, so the screenwriting is almost like a transparent art form where the screenwriter's not really being celebrated. Why? Well, because movies are a visual medium. They're not a writer's medium, like novels would be. So screenwriting, you have to distill the elements of life in a way that furthers the story, that where there's an act one and an act two and an act three, and you don't want to violate the principles of screenwriting by just going to plot and deferring to plot and just kind of telling the story. And so I would just go all the way back to the original principle I mentioned, which was engagement. I think whether you're a painter or a dancer or an actor or a screenwriter or a novel writer or a poet, I think that he who keeps his butt in the chair the longest is going to succeed. So there's a breakthrough element to writing. And it just feels so amorphous when you sit in a chair and you've got this giant whiteboard and you're just like looking at it, but like God's faithful with this stuff. He's really faithful. And if you're engaging, like, what do I want to write about? Why? Okay. And just to clarify the point on plot driven versus character driven, I could watch Robert Duvall make a peanut butter sandwich with no dialogue in a 2-minute short film. And it would be interesting to me because he has this inner life that is extremely intentional. And so when I watch Bobby Duvall, he's an amazing actor. One of the reasons he's an amazing actor is because he's got so much going on inside. And he's interesting and he's intentional. So he's very character driven. So my point is, well, there's nothing happening in that 2-minute short film, right? He's just making a peanut butter sandwich, but he's got this inner life that is transposed onto the screen that makes it a character driven 2-minute short film, because you'll know, is he grieving the death of his wife? And while he's making the peanut butter sandwich, you're going to know, because Robert Duvall is a very character driven actor. So so that just takes us back, Lance, just to the engagement thing.
Yeah.
In the Leonard Cohen example, 7 years to write that song.
Yeah, no, this is so fascinating. I love that you're bouncing, and it's like we're having a little seminar here. This is like gold. I think anybody that's taking time in this session that's listening to this, it's like, man, there's like so many nuggets flying. Can you describe a little bit, like talking into that, you felt initially, man, I'm going to like bring the kingdom to Hollywood. Talk about some of the journey there, because I know there was a story arc of maybe understanding early days, understanding now, understanding at a middle point of how your mind has opened to what kingdom coming into Hollywood can look like, that influence, that leaven in the whole dough.
So I did a one-man theatrical show in 1995 because after I freshly gave my life to Jesus, which I did, it was an agreement. I wanted to blow off a lot of creative steam. And so I also wanted to play characters. that I wanted to play because I was auditioning and I wasn't getting anything yet. And so I was like, I'm gonna do this my way. So I just did this very creative show. I wrote this thing. I had a staff, and I got to see and I performed it at my theater company in downtown New York City in Tribeca, and it was received really well. And I did everything I wanted to do, you know, like I had like I was making a comment on Babylon, on our society, on our culture.
Okay.
And I had like this Coors Light commercial playing in the lobby of the theater, like this slow-mo, like guys and girls on the beach playing volleyball, Lance. And there's a Coors Light commercial, and they're jumping up and like spiking this ball. And I had this really trippy ambient music before like William Augusto and before like you know, all of the ambient music that we have now on YouTube. And but I wanted to make a statement of how crazy our culture is, how much we worship form over function. And so, you know, girls in bikinis, like, and it was scary. It was kind of scary, and that was the intention. And I had like I had magazine cutouts all over the walls because I wanted people to come into the theater, but I wanted them to have an experience. And so then they come into the theater after just getting completely weirded out in the lobby, and then they sit down, and then, you know, I did this whole, it was about 45 to 50 minutes. I wanted it to be a little too short as opposed to a little too long. And it was essentially just about a guy who was losing his mind in our culture. It was multimedia. And through that, I got to see the power of ministry through the arts.
Wow.
Secular setting, because it was all about Jesus, but it was in a secular setting. And I didn't know how crazy I was to do that. Because, you know, you're freshly saved and you're like, yeah. And then like, next thing you know is you're just inviting everything into that world. But God was awesome. And as hard as it was for me to go up on my opening night, I thought I was going to die. Like I thought I was going to die. And I didn't know that it was just this completely demonic attack coming against me at the time. I kind of, a little bit, you know, but, and it was just received really well. It was great. And so after that, I was like, all right, Lord, let's do this. Yeah, Hollywood. Yeah, Jesus, Hollywood. Yeah, I'm going to go with curtain number 1. I'd like the Brad Pitt favor and the George Clooney favor. And curtain number 2. And God was cool. Like so I worked with my 2 favorite directors out of the gate. One was through a connection, Milos Forman. I auditioned for him. The other was Gus Van Sant. And I love these guys. I love them. And I love Gus Van Sant and Milos so much because they're artists.
Yeah.
Gus Van Sant went to the Rhode Island School of Design. And he's a freaky artist in a beautiful way. Like the movie Private Idaho that he did with River Phoenix. And I'm actually borrowing from that now.
Yeah.
That movie, bro, is like 30 years old.
Yeah, his stuff, dude. I love Gus. What'd you do with Gus Van Sant? Like his stuff is so compelling.
Oh, yeah, I did Good Will Hunting. I had like a prominent scene. Yeah, I had a prominent scene in Good Will Hunting with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck.
That's
and
crazy.
I loved that script. And it's funny, when you see the movie, you know, you see what an artist Gus is. Like he does weird things. Like there's a brawl in that movie. Gus, Matt, and Ben are in a park just fighting these dudes in Boston. But then he puts on like it's like the score that he used, Danny Elfman. It was so contrarian to what you would normally expect in a movie that could have been an alpha type movie, but you saw Gus went so much deeper into the character driven story element, right? You see the interior of Matt Damon's character, Will Hunting, and you see how he's really suffering because of this wound, and he's up against this battle of meaning and meaninglessness and purpose and purposelessness. And he's really come up against this orphan spirit, right? This sense of abandonment in his life, and how it's manifested in this self-hatred dynamic that plays out. And Gus hit that hard, with these unusual choices. And so I loved Gus Van Sant. So when I got Good Will Hunting, I was like, what? I was so excited because Private Idaho really marked me. And it was just this movie with River Phoenix, and I loved Gus's choices in it. He did these crazy art house indie film choices, with a big giant canary yellow screen saying, "Have a nice day," with a smiley face, to just give this launching pad to an opposite sensation because of River Phoenix's really horrible life as a male prostitute, his character in Portland, Oregon, And so, and just, I don't know, there was something about Gus's bold choices in that were so life-giving, so godly to me.
Wow.
And I don't necessarily think or know that Gus was a man of faith. I don't really know, but just from my experience, but he was, when it came to art, in his childlike belief, which to me is godly and radically powerful and radically life-giving. And so, so God giving me a movie with him was really cool. It was a small part, but it was a memorable part. And Milos Forman too, because in Amadeus and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, those were also two movies that marked me permanently because of Milos's genius, because of his relentless pursuit as a creative steward of the expertise that he was given. Like he was like he's an unusual director. He's from the Czech Republic, and he's just an unusual director. So anyway, God had to take me, Lance, through a really brutal journey of like a seed falling into the ground and dying, or else it's not going to bear much fruit. Like I had to, historically, I would really find, because of just the way I grew up with my own gouging, my own wounds, God, I found a lot of my significance through other people or through achievement. So going from having my own orphan struggle with abandonment, in a way more spiritualized abandonment than, but there was a lot of just weird stuff in my household. Infidelity and alcoholism. And so there was, kind of classic broken model. And so going from that to sudden recognition in Hollywood, where you get worshiped for being in a movie or a television show that people are like, "Whoa, dude, you killed it." Like suddenly you're getting recognized on the street and it feels so good. But I was always very suspect of that, because I knew that there's something weird and perverse and wrong about that. There's nothing weird or wrong with getting people's commendation for doing a good job in your work. There's nothing wrong with that at all. We all love that. It feels so good, right? But then I think the science behind it's become a little bit of this thing where we really do worship. I'm just calling it out. We worship television and film and actors and actresses. It's like Greek pageantry on steroids. So I had this like kind of Holy Spirit just, showed me like, don't go there. Like, don't ever go there. But we kind of probably passive-mindedly go to that place of loving how that feels. It's very human. God gives us a lot of grace for it. The one-man show that I did, I actually called that out in my own self, my own tendency to be idolatrous, to have this spiritual adultery, because I'm prone to that. It's the way I'm wired. And so then God's like, well, I'm going to make you an actor. And my tendency to be vulnerable to that, I called that out in that one-man show that I did in 1995. Like before I ever did a TV show or a movie, I was scared. I was like, I need to just like pull the curtain back before anything begins here. And so I did. And but God still wanted, in his infinite paternal goodness, he wanted to take me through a lot of times of like barrenness. So I book about 1% of everything that I audition for. And even still, that's a horrible percentage.
Okay.
And it's probably normal on some level, but on, sometimes I'm like, Father, is that you? Or Satan, is that you? Like, I'm not really sure, like sometimes, but I do know that I feel like the Lord, has really wanted to grow me well, close to him. He's kept me on a short leash. And so the adversity has been very life-giving for me, because if I ever have started to find significance or comfort levels in working in this industry it's just different than other industries because of its final product, then I just think he's really been involved with me, keeping me from fame and stardom. And that's great, because I've had a little bit of it, and that's been super fun. It's been super fun. I love it. Like it's great. It's great when people recognize you for your work and they love it and you do good work. But I think God's also really interested in me being a creator of content more than the acting thing. So
Okay.
yeah, because I think the acting thing was the way I thought it was supposed to go.
Yeah.
But and it's mixed with my own stubbornness too. Because creating content is very different than recreating content. Acting is recreation, whereas writing, screenwriting, that's creation. So
Wow.
yeah.
I love it.
Did I answer your question, bro? Like, or partially? Probably just partially, huh?
No, you did.
Okay.
Yeah, we heard about your journey. That's what I was hoping to hear. And yeah, your perspective on the industry and how God's moving in the industry in different ways. And I could see that evolves over time, and
Yeah.
probably where you're at when you're first coming out into that acting space to now it's different.
Yeah.
Anything, we're getting closer towards landing this thing. This is so fascinating, man. I'm really inspired talking to you. I love this. I feel like we could definitely go a lot longer. I'm wondering, anything else that you want to add to speak to the idea of, creativity, beautifying the earth, art being about bringing beauty, maybe where there's brokenness. You've definitely shared a lot of thoughts there already. So if nothing else to add, that's fine. But I don't know if there might be something else in there.
Yeah, there's probably a couple. I'll put my clock on here.
No, you're good.
Corey Ten Boom, who wrote this book, Amazing Love, said the two places where she saw people desiring the deepest things of God was Sing Sing and Hollywood. And I've done prison ministry for years, and so I definitely track with that. But then I've also seen this quite a bit on movie and TV sets. People go to Hollywood because they want a happy ending, and there's no happier ending than the gospel. Like, it's pretty scandalously happy, where like the Lord like invites us to actually kind of be his equal, and we're like co-seated with him, co-reigning, co-ruling with him, co-making disciples of nations and transforming the earth. Like, it's pretty crazy, and so I see in Hollywood a lot of people who have probably been very fearful of what I'll just call like a Jezebel spirit of control, that wants to kill creativity. And so they don't drop Jesus's name, but when you start to bring the gospel, then they'll come out of the woodwork. It's kind of like Jonathan and his armor bearer taking out the Philistines. And then like suddenly Israel, Saul, all of those who had defected from Israel to the Philistines, all of a sudden they just rise up because of what Jonathan and his armor bearer did. And I feel like that's the creatives. I feel like there's a major whistle. There's like a shofar that the creatives are holding and that needs to be blown. I think it's going to come from the right brain. Because I think we live in a world that's probably hyper controlled by analysis and by the left brain. And we can't live in a world without that.
Sure.
But I just feel like the right brainers, you know, the creatives probably need to come out of hiding and blow the shofar. And I'm speaking to myself as well. You know, I've wanted to do another one-man show. It's 27 years later. And I want to do a show that's around revelation. And because I think it needs a right brain expression, because there's no greater theological cankerworm probably than revelation. But at the end of the day, it's the revealing of King Jesus. It's just the revealing of this guy. It's Christ in Lance, the hope of glory, right? That's what revelation is. So those seals, those trumpets, those bowls, well, what if they're actually on a microbial level, these things, and it's literally about removing everything that hinders us from love? What if it's that, you know? And I feel like the Holy Spirit just started speaking to me creatively about revelation a couple of years ago. And I was like, well, that's cool. Well, how about a multimedia right brain expression of that, you know, of like the revealing of King Jesus in individuals. And it's this customized scroll that's really built for every single believer in an extremely personal way. But again, like that creative impulse that we talked about of engagement, it's just about engaging it. Just about engaging that little treasure map that is for each and every individual, instead of seeing it in this theological way and this Antichrist is going to rise up and pound the saints. And, you know, it's just like, all right, hold on. Like what, you know, so I feel, Lance, yeah, I want to encourage myself to run harder with this childlikeness thing, you know, this creative impulse that I think is a ribbon cutting ceremony for each and every one of us that probably unlocks a whole metaverse of the Father's heart and who he really is for each and every one of us. Because it's like that Roman, that Greco-Roman, you know, that thing that Daniel saw that just stomps, you know, it's like that Greco-Roman thing. It's so, that cultural left brain thing where we just become bots and we forget who we are. We forget who he says we are. I feel like creativity has so much to say about that, and that impulse, that way of our fourth kingdom way of doing life, it really stomps out this creativity thing, which I think has hidden treasure and value for all of us.
I love it.
And I feel like it's going to have a major impact with the church.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so much freedom there. And man, if we could live childlike, we get the kingdom.
Yeah. We get the kingdom, right? It's his good pleasure to give it to us.
That's a big word.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to share this, if people would like to follow you or just see what you're up to, get connected to you. Is there like a social media address you want to share, or
you know, my email? It's pretty lame.
Well, if you're okay to share that, you don't have to share that.
No, I'm good with it. I'm good with it. You know, but there's a guy named Bob Goff who wrote a book, which I've never read, but I called him on the phone because he left his email at the end or his phone number. He wrote a book called Love Does, and he just has his phone number, you know, at the end of the book. And I was like, dang, Bob, that's cool. So my email is scottwinters@mac.com. And then I've got a website, scottwilliamwinters.com. And then I've got a nonprofit called Merciful, and the web address is mercifulyou.org. So the word
YOU, mercifulyou.org.
Sorry, Merciful You, like a university.
Okay.
.org.
Great.
Yeah, that's it. I'm waiting for a huge project to get more involved with social media. It's been waiting for like 15, 20 years for the huge project.
Well, I'm excited the projects you're involved in right now.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see the outcomes, the screenplay that you're working on, the games that you're building. It's exciting, man. And really, man, what a value talking to you. I so appreciate you being so open and free with your insides and how you're wired and what drives you. This is very inspiring. Yeah, hoping that anyone that's taking part in this moment, you guys are inspired, eyes are open in some way, you're encouraged to enter into that childlike state that Scott's been talking about and engage in creativity. Seems to be the word of the day right now from our session with Scott. Thanks for time together, man. Love you. With that, we're going to say peace, adios.
Love you too, Lance. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Absolutely. Okay, we'll see you guys soon.
Sounds good.